Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Hope you're all fit and well. Ultimate Plant Trailers over on Instagram. Good morning to you. Today's show is going to be a bit more somber, and I'll get to all that in just a moment. One of the reasons I wanted to mention it is because Natalie Huxtable has just joined us over on Instagram. Morning, Natalie. Hope you're well. Obviously, those of you that don't know, Natalie is the sister of one of the guys that was killed at Didcot more than 8.5 years ago. We seem to have the usual blockage of comments at the moment. I can see there are people in the chat, but nobody's actually coming through at the moment. I'm sure they will in the fullness of time. 1 second. Just a very quick reminder while the chat is catching up, a very quick reminder. This is our penultimate show before I head off to the US of A for just over a week. There are no shows next week whatsoever. No shows. I repeat, there are no shows next week whatsoever. Yeah. One other thing, I just had a very quick update. Natalie Huxtable just said we've got a meeting in October. Fingers crossed for you, Natalie. Fingers crossed. I'm assuming that's a meeting with the police or the HSE or quite possibly both, but I'll keep my fingers crossed for you. Now, if you were here yesterday, you remember that I was talking about the new drone that I've got. Couldn't show it to you because I couldn't find it. It's there. That's it. That's the drone in all its sexy new glory. There you are. Just to recap very quickly, still the chat hasn't caught up. I'm not sure what's going on, but we were taking donations to help me buy this thing, and I can tell you that bit there, paid for by Gary Muirhead and Chris Ford. I'm going to have to crack on, I guess, because yes, apparently, according to Natalie, the meeting in October is going to be a massive meeting. Everyone, HSE and police as well, are going to be involved in that. So the chat still isn't coming through, so I'm just going to soldier on and pretend it is. Hopefully it will come through, because otherwise the mystery machine is going to be a bit hard to do. I will warn you in advance, though, today's show is going to be a lot more serious and a lot more somber than usual. I apologise. I realise that's not the ideal way to start your working day, but these are things that need to be reported, that need to be said, and that need to be heard, because as you will hear, everyone involved, directly or otherwise, seems to have gone deaf mute. Just so you know, today is the 5th anniversary of the double death up at Redcar. John Mackay and Tommy Williams both killed on this day 5 years ago. We'll be coming to all of that in just a moment. So, while I'm still waiting for the chat to spring into life, assuming it does, it is time for me to roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get the show on the road. And there is something of a relief. There is something of a relief. All of the chat just arrived at once. Bizarrely, I mean, Chris Ford was the first here, says, good morning, the Develon is feeling good. He was here at 10 o'clock, although that didn't arrive until nearly 10:05. Mark Whiting's here as well. Gary Muirhead as well. Dan Cullen's here. Jim Turner's here. Dan Cullen saying good morning to Natalie. Gary Muirhead saying exactly the same. Well, that's tiny. I'm sure he's talking about the drone and not that. There you are. And just on the subject, I've mentioned the fact that today is the 5th anniversary of the double death up at Redcar. Natalie Huxtable just said, I know how they feel. Like nobody else, I would imagine. That's what 170 quid gets you. Yes, it is. Listen, the stuff I have planned for it. Is it fresh from Ukraine? I sincerely hope not. Chris, good job it wasn't a pager. Yes, isn't that a thing? I mean, the very fact that there are still people in the world using pagers came as a bit of a surprise to me. I thought that was a strictly 1980s thing, but apparently not. And our friend Mick is here as well. It's going to be, as I say, a serious show today, and it's quite a long show. The final film of the day is about 10, 12 minutes long. I realise it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and I fully understand if you would prefer to bail out rather than tuning into that. But if you can stick around, please do so. In the meantime, I do need to post the question of the day, get the show on the road. So here's the intro. I'll get to all that in just a moment, but stand by your beds because there's a model citizen in our midst, Mr. Gaz Evans. Been a while. Morning, guys. He says, the newlywed, if I'm not very much mistaken, the newlywed Gaz Evans. Morning, Gaz. Hope you're fitting well, my friend. Natalie Huxtable says, what a man you are, honestly. Massive heart. Good Lord. Stop. Stop. Don't have a massive heart, just have a big gob. That's the absolute truth of it. It is Thursday, the 19th of September. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition. In today's show, we are Develon. Well, not me personally, but Develon are Develon. AI will take centre stage at Minexpo in 2024. That's just next week. Ollie Guns reports from JCB's world headquarters, and there is yet another pretender to the Brock crown. Yeah, good luck with that. Plus, in my morning monologue, which isn't really my morning monologue today, we're going to be remembering John Mackay and Tommy Williams, who were killed on a demolition project in Redcar this day 5 years ago, and their families are still waiting for answers. But before we get to all of that, we do have the small matter of today's mystery machine, and I can tell you, unless I win today and tomorrow, Dan Cullen gets the prize. So if Dan Cullen comes out on top today, the prize will be going in the post later today. So, mystery machine looks like, well, I'll show you in just a second. Yeah, mystery machine looks like this. Yes, it has a wheel. A wheel. Is that a front wheel or is that a rear wheel? I'll leave you to decide. We are looking, as always, for a make and a model. As I say, Dan Cullen is already in quite a lead if he wins today, because we're finishing the Mystery Machine League table early this month, and because I won't be here for the next week. So, yeah, if anybody's got any guesses on that, I'd love to hear from you. Hang on a minute. Jim Turner says, what does Jim Turner say? Can you send me information on the drone, please, Mark? It might be handy for me if it's not too expensive. 170 quid. I think, it's pretty reasonable. I'll come to the I'll come to the question of the day in just a moment. Will Demolition be going? Not sure what that's about. Come back to that one, and we've had our first guess on the mystery machine. Dan Cullen reckons it could be a Cat 777. It is not a Cat 777. It is not a cat. It is not even a truck. So we'll come back to all of that. But I do need to hang on a minute. Jim Turner reckons it could be a Latourneau massive wheel loader. Don't know the number, and it probably isn't one anyway. It isn't. Dan Cullen going for the Cat 797. Definitely not a cat. Definitely not a truck. So keep the guesses coming in. I'm going to take that away because I do need to remind you of our question of the day. Yeah, once again, our resident quizmaster, Gary Muirhead, came up with the goods today. And his question was this. What is the best concert you've ever been to? Now, I've got to be honest, it's a tough one for me because I've seen some awesome shows in my time. The Prodigy at Glastonbury, amazing. Springsteen, every bit as good as you'd imagine. And even though she was completely off her face, Amy Winehouse was pretty damn good too. But I do have a tale to weave, okay? I'm glad you asked this question, Gary, because I don't get to tell this story very often. So, back in 1982, my all-time favourite band, Ultravox, released an album called Monument. And they then went off on tour to promote it. Just before Christmas 1982, myself and three of my old school friends went to see them at what used to be called the Hammersmith Odeon. The entire show, absolutely superb, but they finished with all four members of the band stood side by side playing drums at the front of the stage. It was one of the greatest things I've ever seen. That was 1982. 3 years later, the same band lineup played Live Aid, and then they all went their separate ways. And they didn't play together again until they did a reunion in 2009, 24 years later. They returned to the same venue, the Hammersmith Odeon, even though it's now called the Eventim Apollo. They ended the show in exactly the same way. All four of them, somewhat older, drumming together like they'd never been apart. And then when the lights went up, I found that I was in the same row and just a few seats away from one of my old school friends who I'd seen them with the first time round. So that would be my favourite concert. But what about you? I'd love to hear from you. Going back to Natalie Huxtable, she says, my heart hurts for them. We would be 9 years soon. Still seems they died for nothing. I just want an end to its closure for my both my brothers. Then September the 5th was a year John passed. Yeah. Unfortunately, Natalie lost one brother at Didcot and then lost another one subsequently. So feelings are with you today, Natalie. Hopefully October sheds some light on things. Going back to our mystery machine, what have we got here? What do we have? Gary Muirhead reckons it could be the Komatsu WA200-8. It is not. Dan Cullen reckons it could be a John Deere 30-ton ADT. It is not. And it's not an AD30B either. No, it's none of those things. But keep the guesses coming in. I'll show you a bit more just to put you on the right track. There you are. Does that help in any way, shape or form? Possibly. No. Okay, I'll take that away and I'll come back to that in just a moment because we do have a show to get to and I'll be right back after this. Good morning very quickly to A1 Pressure Washers over on Instagram. Good morning, ladies, gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed for joining us and for keeping clean the plant and equipment that this industry relies upon. Those fine folks at Develon have got a brand new film out. It's called We Are Develon, and I'm going to show it to you right now. When the thing will play.
Building the foundation of lives. Turning the future into reality. Creating your success together, where endless innovation and solutions are created to achieve the goal. That's where Develon is. We create value beyond products. With the best-in-class performance, market-leading fuel efficiency, and durability. With our end-to-end after-service and support, Develon is committed to our customers and partners' success. We create solutions beyond products. We go beyond making products. We are breaking new grounds with innovative digital solutions for productivity, for safety. We change the future of our customers and the world. Expecting changes in the industry and technologies, we create sustainable solutions to pass the foundation of lives onto the next generation. For the technology you are waiting for. For the future you are dreaming of. To continue developing onwards. Our innovation continues. We are Develon.
I wish I had a voice like that. We are Develon. Makes this show so much better to listen to, wouldn't it? Chris Roll says, love the voiceover, man. Yes, me too. I'd like to do this whole show, you know that the guy that does In a World. I'd love to be able to do it like that. I just sound like a bit of a tit. Right, okay, back to the mystery machine. I can tell you that two people actually, they've got the same answer. They're both wrong, but man alive, they're close. Gary Muirhead reckons it could be an XCMG LW300. It is not. He also reckons it could be an XCMG XC958. It is not one of those either. But here is, Chris Ford, first of all, said, is it a Hyundai 960A? It is not. Dan Cullen going with the same answer. Is it a Hyundai HL 960A? It is not. But both of you, hang on, I need to show you my fingers. Both of you are about that close. Yeah, that close. Very, very close indeed. So let me show it to you again. There is a smidge more. You're both very, very close. Who's going to get the right answer on that one? We shall see in just a moment because I'm going to play this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
I'm sure most of you are aware of Ollie Guns. He's been on this show in the past, and he's also quite a big cheese these days over on, YouTube and various other places as well. He's just been up to JCB and looks like he had a fine old time. Here's the film.
It's been a real privilege to be invited by JCB to come here and see the new innovations on the backhoe range. As you know, I run a machine that's a bit older now, 2015, so like the previous kind of generation really. The laser pole they've got in the system there, I think that can be used on the front. I think you could use it on the back end as well for excavating and just increasing your accuracy. We've loaded lorries here. We had a bit of a laugh earlier, a bit of a race, and loaded a lorry in just under 4 minutes. That's fast, really. You'd struggle to do that with a 13-ton excavator. Being able to road this machine to site, some of them now will do 50k. That's a decent speed to get to a job. It's nice to be able to see these new machines and think, well, maybe it's time to upgrade myself and increase my productivity. And being able to play with a machine with a tilt rotator, I have one on a small machine, a 3-tonner, and I'm very familiar with the tilt rotator concept, but being able to play with one on a backhoe, it's really interesting to see how it handles it. Really great to be able to have a play and see particularly how the owner of that machine uses it in his business and how it's increased the range of things he can get on with. So yeah, great day.
Well done, Ollie. I wonder if he's going to actually go through with that and buy the new one. I wonder. So going back to our mystery machine, what do we have? Chris Ford went with the Hyundai 955. It's not. Gary Muirhead reckons it could be the R210 W-98. It's not. It's not the HD 975. It's not the 940. It's not the 960. However, just while I was saying that, the correct answer has arrived. It's that man again, Dan Cullen. It is indeed the Hyundai, call it what you like, the HL 970A. And to prove it, there we go. That's it in all its glory. Dan Cullen, you have a prize. And the prize, which I found lurking in the back end of my office. Tell me what, can I show it to you? No, I can show you part of it. When I was up at JCB recently, they gave me a cool box or a cool bag, but they also gave me this as well, which I'll show to you. You need me on full screen. Bear with me a second. There you are. That's. I realise it looks like a leather willy warmer. It is not one of those. Within there is. You'll have to trust me on this. There is a drink bottle. There you are, or a flask or something like that. Dan, that will be heading its way to you. I'm going to try and do it. I will try and do it today if possible, if I can get to the post office in time. But by the time I go, it will be on its way, I promise you. Dan Cullen, congratulations. That's 2 months on the trot that Dan Cullen has walked away with the prize. So well done, that man. I do need to write that down because I am keeping the league table. So 3 points. Well done, Dan Cullen. Good work, my friend. Let me take that all away. I'll be back right after a bit of this. Well, the generosity of the audience on the Breakfast Show never ceases to amaze. Dan Cullen says, can you send my prize to Jim Turner, please? I'm more than happy to do that. Jim, I will need your address, but you have yourself a JCB cool bag and the drinks bottle and the holder for it as well, assuming you want it. We'll figure that out between you and Dan, but Dan, that's very generous of you. Thank you very much indeed. Jim, you appear to have won a prize by doing not a great deal as far as I can tell. So yes, keep me informed on that. And Jim, rather, I will need your address. So I'm off to Minexpo. You know that. By this time next week, in actual fact, this time next week will be the last day of Minexpo. Can't believe it. Been waiting for ages to come around, and by this time next week, it will all be over and done with. one of the, well, we mentioned yesterday, one of the key themes of Minexpo is going to be sustainability, but another key theme I expect to be AI, like this.
Hey, we are super excited that we're going to be at Minexpo in Las Vegas, September 24th to 26th. It's the largest mining event in the world, and we've got some exciting announcements that we're going to be making. And we are going to be at booth 1315 in the North Hall. Why are we there? Why is a computer vision company at Minexpo? Because computer vision is helping mines become more productive every day. They're helping with productivity of the actual mining process. They're helping with safety of the environments that mines operating, helping with logistics in terms of getting ore out of the ground, getting it efficiently onto a truck, and getting it processed as quickly as possible. It's helping the entire value chain of mining. Why is this important? Because mines are supplying all the critical material that we need to drive the modern economy, to drive AI, to drive all of our mobile devices, our IoT devices, to drive our driverless cars. All of these things are relying on precious metals and the mining that we know we need to very efficiently deal with, very safely deal with, environmentally consciously deal with, and just work on everything that we can to try to make that as efficient as possible. This is where AI and specifically computer vision are helping. We are psyched to be there. We're going to have some interesting giveaways. Get your mining gear ready and join us in Las Vegas, September 24th to the 26th.
Yeah, I'm hoping to have the time to go and pay that guy a visit. Now, let's have a look. Gary Muirhead says, maybe Jim could keep his iron brew cool in it. Yes, he certainly can. And it looks like Jim is actually accepting the price. So, Jim, please let me have, or please remind me of your address. I may have it here somewhere, but if not, please do send it to me. We've got one more thing to show you in just a moment, and then we'll get into what is not really a monologue. It is, but it's not me. I'll tell you about it in just a second. So let me do this
Since
first.
the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Is there a more dominant force in the world of equipment than Brock? Think about it. The company has pretty much carved itself an unassailable market leadership. Others have come along, Husqvarna, for example. There was a Finnish-built demolition robot, the name of which I've long forgotten. Then there was the ill-fated Akula, which died before it was even born. So I don't hold out too much hope for this latest one, which is a Chinese-built pretender to the Brock crown. But here it is anyway. Yeah, good luck with trying to carve yourself a bit of that demolition robot market. Going back to this, Gary Muirhead says, have you got your mining gear ready? The only mining gear I'm taking with me is a very, very large portion of bullshit, because I don't really do mining. I don't really do mining, so I'm going to have to bluff my way through, but I'll be doing my best. Dan Cullen says, I've never loaded a truck with a 180, but I feel like a Develon or Doosan Quick is quick for loading trucks. Jim Turner says, excuse me, I asked a JCB bod if the 4CX had a bigger bucket than the 3CX, as the clam looked deeper in the photo they'd posted. Was surprised when they said the buckets were the same. I didn't know that. Dan Cullen says, you'll never pass Brock. This looks very bulky. Yes, it does. Looks like it's powered by a diesel engine. I think it is. Yeah, I think it is, which, I don't think the Chinese are too worried about, but obviously we are. we're a bit further ahead on things than all of that. So I am going to roll my end of show stinger in just a second before leaping gazelle-like into what would normally be my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, then please do stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends and your colleagues, and I hope to see you again very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I really would like you to stick around because I'll be back with more after this. Yes, where's the thing? It's this. So today marks the 5th anniversary of a demolition accident in which two men, John Mackay and Tommy Williams, were killed in truly horrific circumstances. Now, I could sit here and regale you with some carefully crafted words about grief, about loss and bereavement, but instead I'm going to read you a letter written by John Mackay's sister, Maggie. In the interest of transparency, I have edited out a small part that relates to the specific cause of the tragedy. For one thing, I don't want to be sued, but far more importantly, I'd hate to prejudice any subsequent court case that might yet arise. Now, I pre-recorded this yesterday, mainly because I didn't trust myself to do it justice live. I can also tell you that the film is about 12 minutes long, but I would urge you to stick around if you possibly can, because there is more to come afterwards. So, with all that being said, I'm going to get this off my hard drive. This is John Mackay's sister, Maggie. Bear with me 1 second while I get this fired up. It's John Scott Mackay. John was tragically killed at around 2:10 p.m. on Thursday the 19th of September 2019 while working at SSI and Redcar for Nationwide Platforms. He was working as a platform operator along with another man, Tommy Williams. There are no words to express how harrowing and devastated myself, John's wife Anne, my parents, my sister, his kids and the wider family and friends feel at the loss of John. This is a pain like no other I've ever felt before. You would think a corporation like Nationwide Platforms would show some compassion, some empathy towards our loss. But sadly, no. Let me relay to you the catalogue of events. John's wife was informed over the telephone around 5 p.m. of my brother's death. They didn't have the decency to send someone round to speak to her. What a god-awful way to receive such gut-wrenching news. Anne was also told that John was in the burns unit down in Middlesbrough Hospital. This was untrue. Anne found out later that night that John and Tommy were still in the cherry picker basket, where they both lay for 6 more nights, as the site was still deemed to be too dangerous. Following my brother's death, Nationwide Platforms director Colin Hotchkiss and Hayley Holloway from Nationwide's HR department came to Anne's house. Hayley advised Anne she was a family liaison officer, which we now believe not to be true. Anne was advised that Nationwide would be there to help and support both Anne and the family. Sadly, no such support was forthcoming to either Anne or the rest of the family. In total, Nationwide visited Anne twice since my brother was killed. They didn't even have the decency to send a bouquet of flowers, card or letter to either Anne for the loss of her husband, nor my parents for the loss of their youngest child and only son. There are no words. My own employers issued me, within a day, a huge bouquet of flowers and a lovely card. Actions speak volumes. Anne was initially advised that she would receive a death in service payment of 2.5 times John's salary, and that Nationwide itself wished to make a donation towards his funeral. Whilst discussing the donation, Hayley made a comment to Anne, "As long as you're not organising a full pipe band." Whether this was meant in jest or not, it was highly inappropriate and downright disrespectful and very hurtful, to say the least. Nationwide also advised that they would pay Anne John's basic wage up to the end of December 2019. Following this meeting, Anne had to chase up Nationwide Platforms regarding John's death in service payment and for information relating to the figures for the same. Anne was only then informed that as John started after a specific date, she would be only entitled to 2 years' basic salary, which worked out less than 1 year's salary. Bearing in mind Nationwide Platform made my brother work mandatory overtime, which was not taken into account, nor was the fact that he was killed whilst working. For a corporation such as Nationwide Platforms, their death in service policy is inadequate. It does not provide cover for their employees being killed at work or take into account the dangerous work their employees carry out. Nationwide's death in service policy stated that a catastrophe, which clearly my brother's death was, only applied where 2 or more employees were working. Access platform operators work solo, so this cover would never apply. This was then followed up by a further meeting with Colin Hotchkiss on the 15th of December, which I attended. He advised us that their death in service policy had not been updated since 1990. Neither John's wife nor our family had any idea just how dangerous John's job actually was. Think about it. Could your family survive after your loss on 1 year's salary? Is your life only worth that? I work in an office and I'm provided with more cover than that. At this meeting, Anne was advised that Nationwide Platforms, as a further gesture of goodwill, will be making a further ex gratia payment, but that she would have to cover the tax on this amount. Nationwide will receive a larger payout for the machinery that's been taken out of action. It sickens me to the core that Nationwide's machinery is worth more than my brother's life. Following John's funeral and the meetings with the company, Anne heard nothing more from Nationwide and had to chase him on several occasions for the donation to John's funeral and his death in service payment. She had to chase him again for the ex gratia payment. This made Anne feel awkward, uncomfortable, and made her feel like she was an annoyance or an inconvenience. Every penny from Nationwide was a prisoner. To add insult to injury, 9 weeks after John's death, Anne received a letter dated the 20th of November 2019. It was addressed to John from the company about health and safety and how important their employees are to them. Anne called to advise them and she was told it was issued in error. You think? I can't tell you how upsetting that was to John's wife to receive such correspondence. The letter was signed off by Colin Hotchkiss. I also wrote to Colin Hotchkiss following the meeting on the 15th and sent a copy to the CEO Don Kenny on both Anne and the family's behalf, requesting various bits of information which he advised he would send us. We also raised the issue of Hayley Holloway's comment. I received a very curt reply from Colin Hotchkiss advising he would not be corresponding with me as I am not John's next of kin. I received no response or recognition from the company CEO. Says it all, really. Following my brother's death and witnessing firsthand how my sister-in-law has been treated, my perception of corporations like Nationwide Platforms is that their employees are only important to them whilst they are alive, because by God they don't give a damn about them when they've been killed on their watch. We've been made to feel as if John did not exist, or that his life didn't matter. Well, John was many things to many people, and the 450 plus people who attended his funeral is testament to that. This for us is not about money, as no amount of money will ever compensate us for the loss of John, nor will it make our suffering any more bearable. This is something we are destined to live with for the rest of our lives. So employees, take note, you are no more than a number on your employer's payroll. The investigation was headed up by D.I. Barker at Cleveland Police and John Heslop from the HSE. Cleveland Police were leading the investigation. During our very first meeting with Chris Barker and John Heslop in December 2019, Chris's words were, "I walked on this site and I said, this is a gross negligence manslaughter case." That comment gave us hope. Never in our wildest dreams did we ever think it would take 5 years to obtain some insight into what actually caused my brother's death. Over the last 4+ years, we've attended many meetings with the police and HSE. We continue to be told they could not tell us anything as the case was ongoing. We did a lot of our own investigations and found out lots of information. Only when we put our findings forward to the police and HSE would they provide us with a somewhat limited response. Our dealings with D.I. Barker were not a pleasant experience. He lied and made promises that he had no intention of keeping, didn't respond to emails and telephone calls. I lodged 2 complaints with Cleveland Police, one dated 13th of January 2021 and the other 4th of June 2021, with regards to D.I. Barker's conduct, both of which were upheld. D.I. Barker had never dealt with such an incident and his incompetence and lack of experience was obvious. We should have been appointed a family liaison officer who will liaise with the family to provide updates to us. Anne did have a Scottish family liaison officer, or an FLO, from September to December 2019. But that FLO was subsequently withdrawn, as updates were to be provided by D.I. Barker. D.I. Barker subsequently moved to Durham Police. Despite him taking this case with him, he didn't have the decency to contact us to advise us of his move, nor did he provide any forwarding contact details. Following the upholding of our complaints, we were appointed a further contact within Cleveland Police due to the breakdown in the relationship with D.I. Barker. I would like to point out that if it hadn't been for John Heslop of the HSE, we wouldn't have any information other than that which we were told at our first meeting. The HSE's involvement in my brother's case has been outstanding. John Heslop has listened to our rants over the last 4+ years, but he's dealt with them with the utmost compassion and professionalism, and I cannot thank him enough. Following the 5 years of investigation, the police have found there is no case for gross negligence or corporate manslaughter, and the case is now proceeding by way of HSE charges. I lodged a victim's right to review. The findings remain the same: no negligence or corporate manslaughter. The former SSI site is being charged with 20 HSE breaches, and John F. Hunt, the demolition contractor involved, is being charged with 13 breaches. How can there not be gross negligent or manslaughter charges or corporate manslaughter charges and only HSE charges? Following the incident, my sister-in-law received a letter from local Mayor Ben Houchin dated the 18th of October 2019 with his condolences and stated, "Please don't hesitate to contact him." I wrote to him on the 27th of November 2019 requesting his assistance and inviting him to meet with us in Edinburgh. I wrote again on the 5th of March 2020 regarding the lack of progress. I received a response on the 13th of March, and in one paragraph it stated, "As the regional mayor, I have no formal involvement with South Tees site company." Yet he's on social media platforms and the news promoting this site in every which way he can. It would have spoken volumes about the man if he had taken the time to meet with us as a family, given that my brother was killed within his jurisdiction. But he continues to brush under the carpet the fact that 2 men were killed on this site. I also emailed Mr. Houchin a couple of times regarding the lack of response and issues with the police. He was again reluctant to get involved, but did write to the police. But we later saw on TV the 2 of them playing golf together. I say no more. Mr. Houchin on 29th of February wrote to the HSE asking for an update on progress. I can only assume this was due to the up-and-coming elections, as this man has done all he can to avoid us for the last 4+ years. We are now at the stage of proceedings where the HSE have issued their proposed charges to both parties. This time to respond was extended as they needed more time. They've had 4+ years to deal with this. Matters are now with the HSE legal team prior to the case being lodged with the court. If and when the case is ready for lodging, it could be another 2 to 3 years before the case is even heard. In the meantime, Anne has raised a personal injury claim for the loss of John, but is unable to progress matters until the outcome of the HSE case because both parties are blaming each other. In Scotland, John's wife, his children, grandchildren, my parents and his siblings all have a claim. In England, only Anne has such a claim, which is nowhere near what she could claim in Scotland. The English process is utterly farcical. Not until you're in this position do you realise just how poorly families are compensated for the loss of a loved one following a death at work. You're awarded more for hurt feelings than for the ultimate sacrifice of the loss of a life. How does that make any sense? Bear with me for 1 second. Stop that. Now, I said there was more to this story, and there is. As you just heard, John's widow Anne, his sister Maggie, and his entire family have been let down repeatedly by his employer, by the police, and by the judicial system. But that's not all. On Monday this week, Anne Mackay received the following message from the HSE. In my last update to you on the 5th of August, I explained that I was waiting for colleagues in HSE Science Division to provide some additional work that would enable me to conclude my part of the investigation and submit the case to HSE Legal Services Division. I can confirm that the Science Division work will be completed this week, allowing me to finally conclude my report and submit it to our Legal Services Division. Once the Legal Services Division receive my report and a detailed bundle of evidence, they will perform a check to ensure that all relevant documentation is present and has been processed correctly so that it is legally admissible. At this point, they will confirm that our lawyer has taken control of the case, and they will review my findings and make a decision whether or not to prosecute. I will provide you with a further update no later than Tuesday, the 15th of October 2024, and can assure you that I'm determined to have the case with our lawyer by that date. Now, it's not much, and it doesn't really change anything, but at least the HSE responded, unlike some. Back in June of this year, Anne Mackay also wrote to Duncan Riddell, the incumbent CEO of the National Federation of Demolition Contractors, to explain her frustration and to plead for his support. In fairly short order, Anne received a message from Mr. Riddell saying that he was in receipt of her letter and that he would respond to her further. That was in June. We're now approaching the end of September, and she has still received no such response. The family of John Mackay and presumably Tommy Williams have been failed time and time and time again. As Maggie said in her letter, it seems that employees in this business are just a number on a payroll spreadsheet. So, I've been watching the chat coming through, and I'm going to go over to it now. Let's have a look. Dan Cullen, thank you for everything you do. Keep the show alive. Dedicate. Thanks, Dan. I'm not going to dwell on that. We have bigger fish to fry on today's show. Let's have a look. When you're going to break out those glasses again and the cap? To be perfectly honest, and I think I've now discovered what the issue was. You might remember, I used to wear these all the time. But I was struggling. I was really struggling to read the script. I tried blowing it up, and it was very, very blurry, and I'm now wearing reading glasses. But I was recommended to go on vitamin B12. I do a squirt of vitamin B12, and I tried to do the script yesterday, mainly so that you couldn't see my eyes, because I did find that quite hard to do. And I found I could read it very, very well. So I think the B12 has kind of led to a bit of a recovery. So that's a smaller side. Dan Cullen, back onto the subject. Yes, they all lie to the families. That's unbelievable. Shows the disregard to them. How disgusting. Hope they're watching this. Yeah. Well, I hope they're watching it too, but I'm not entirely convinced that anyone really cares. You know, Nationwide is still going about their business. John F. Hunt were up for a demolition award or something a little while ago. Carry on. Gary Muirhead says, we'll go to work every day to earn money to pay bills and put food on the table, and never imagine that we'll never make it home to our loved ones. No family should ever be put through this. Shocking. Just proves we are just a number in a sea of others. Yeah, I in a very different way. I remember trying to explain this to my eldest son, who was, bought into the cult of the employee or the employer that he was working with. And I said, you're just a number. If you decided to quit, they'd have you replaced the same afternoon. Nobody gives a toss. They really don't. Dan says, oh my God, that's unbelievable for the death in service from a company not updating, should be ashamed of themselves. But of all the things, there are certain things in life that you look at it and you just go, really? When you see somebody going into like a supermarket or a newsagent and stealing the charity box, to me, that's about as low as you can get. But delaying payment of a death in service payment, really? Are you that hard up, or are you that uncaring? I think it's the latter. With their disrespect, why do people still hire off them? Unbelievable. They should be put on social media. I mean, listen, Anne Mackay has been fighting this fight, particularly on LinkedIn, for, best part of 5 years now, and has got nowhere. And in actual fact, was threatened with legal action because she was so vociferous in her protest. Threatened with legal action. Really? Mick says, this is making me sick. That is a damning indictment for the whole construction and demolition industry and those associated with it all. It is, it's salt in the wound, isn't it? Listen, we are all, we're all aware of the impact that a death on a site will have. And think about it from a private point of view, and this is, I'll be honest, this is something I find very, very hard, because I'm largely dead inside. But you know when you know somebody that's lost a parent or a loved one or a spouse or whatever it might be, and the human thing to do at that point in time is to reach out. As I say, I find it very, very hard because I don't do grief well. I'm very, very poor at it. But the human thing is to reach out and to sympathise and to empathise and to help in any way you can. And it might just be popping round and making them a cup of tea or making sure they've got something to eat because, frankly, food and drink, I've been there, food and drink are the last thing you're worried about when you're grieving. What we're talking about here is, the police, the employer, the local mayor, the judiciary system acting in what I can only describe as an inhumane way. It is not human. As I say, human is to put your arm around and console. Inhuman is to say, sod you, you're on your own. And that's exactly what the industry has done. Dan Cullen says, exactly, just a number. They try to blame you for the inconvenience of a tragedy on site. Unbelievable. As long as they make their millions, they don't care about the individuals. Indeed. So much disregard and disrespect to the families involved. Let down by everyone. Yeah. And I hate to do this because, they are two very separate incidents and everything else. But we were talking just the other day about Didcot. Didcot, the families of Didcot have been fed exactly the same lines. They've been dismissed and pushed to the back burner, and the whole thing is being repeated. Which one was on a Coleman and Company site. This one was on a John F. Hunt site. Two totally different areas, nothing to connect them whatsoever, and yet the outcome is exactly the same, which to me suggests that this is an endemic problem. This is an issue of corporate greed over humanity. Simple as that. Mick, cutting to the point, damn the NFDC, a waste of fucking time. I was struck by something when I was made aware of that. When ministers are trying to improve the service or claiming to improve the service within the NHS, they do a thing. So that they are keen to reduce wait times. So what they do, and bear in mind, I've turned up at A&E for various reasons over the years. You turn up at A&E and within 5-10 minutes you are seen by a triage nurse. And the triage nurse asks exactly the same questions as the person on reception. What's your name? How old are you? Are you registered at this hospital? What's your date of birth? And what is wrong with you? You sit in the waiting room, and then the triage nurse asks you the same things again. And then you go back to the waiting room, and there you sit for another 6, 7, 8 hours. But as far as the statistics for the NHS are concerned, you were seen in very, very short order. I believe that's exactly why and how the NFDC or Duncan Riddell responded to Anne. Responded in very short order. I will get back to you. So look, I can't even remember what ISO number the NFDC has, but I have had a piece of correspondence and I have responded to it. After which, it doesn't matter whether it takes a week, a month, or a year, because there is a tick in the box to say that piece of communication, that piece of correspondence has been responded to. Stray piece of beard, I do apologise. Better without the shades. The eyes are the window to the soul. Yeah, the problem with that, there is a problem with that, though, Jim. My soul is a dark, dark place. Dan says, exactly, Mick, I agree. They are a disgrace to the industry. Wasn't expecting this because I knew she was on her travels, but one of the ladies in question, Anne. Morning, Anne. Yes, we are watching. We are travelling on the train to the site. Very emotional to hear Maggie's words out loud. Thank you, Mark. We are losing the signal at times. I wouldn't recommend you watch it on playback, but it's there if you want it. It'll be on YouTube and on LinkedIn and various other places. But again, this just reiterates what I said before. I'm really, really terrible at grief. I don't even, bearing in mind I write for a living, at times like this, I don't have the words. But Anne, Maggie, the rest of John's family, and Tommy's family as well, but the rest of John's family, heart goes out to you. I don't, as I say, I don't have the words, but I hope today is okay. And I sincerely hope that come October, things might actually move in the right direction. I can't say I'm hopeful, given the way that you've been treated over the past 5 years, but I keep my fingers crossed for you. Just all the best for today. Mick says, Didcot, Redcar, how many more will it take for those in charge to take note of the total dismay deaths at work calls? We voted these people in. Why the hell do they not listen? Or are they now interested only what gifts they get? You don't get gifts for nothing. Yeah. And, I can be critical of the police. I can be critical of nationwide platforms, and I am. I think they've both been very, very poor. But how about our friend Ben Houchin? Bearing in mind, this site was all the lead into this huge development up in the northeast of England, where we're talking about future gigafactories, and they're making giant blades for offshore wind turbines, lots of employment. And Ben Houchin has ridden high on the hog for about 5 years. Look at look at all the development I am personally bringing to this area. Look at all the jobs we've created. Look at all the income. Look at how we're going to cure the local unemployment issue. Look at all the houses this will bring. Look at how we will drive this part of the world forward. And not one point has he ever said, oh yeah, by the way, in the process of all of this, 2 people died. In actual fact, he has compounded it by sending the family a very, very cliched letter. Reach out if you need me, I'm here for you. And then when they did reach out, they got absolutely fuck all in return. Dan Cullen says, that delaying thing is these companies wait until they have the cash to substitute it as they hold back payments until they have equivalent in the bank account. They are not an employee-based company. These companies care more about their bank accounts than workers on their sites. Greed is why. Well, it is. It is. But again, it goes back to what I was saying about humanity. If, God forbid, I were to kill somebody, I don't think I could live with myself anyway, but I could live with myself a whole lot less if I was told I needed, or if I felt obliged to pay the family of that deceased person some money. I would feel so much worse just sitting on it. My humanity would say, here's the money. Please take the money. I'm so sorry, but here's the money. You don't sit on it. It just blows my mind. Mick, the problem is they won't take notice as long as they got payments coming in. Everything else takes a back burner. It does. It does. If companies, this is Jim Turner, right, by the way, if companies put aside a very small percentage of yearly profits each year, set it up as a charitable contribution, that would probably help them with tax. And in the event of a death at work, they'd be kitty money to help the families affected if and when something happens. Yeah. Yeah. And let's be absolutely honest, and I don't know exactly how it works because this is not my area of expertise. But you'd have to think, pretty damn sure that everybody at all points of that job will have been insured up to the hilt. So the owners of the site, bearing in mind we're talking about this mega site, you would think that they were insured. They were insured to protect the land and people upon it. You would think that John F. Hunt, who were doing the demolition, they would need to have insurance in place because, things do go wrong in demolition. Nationwide platforms who are sending men to work in platforms, and we all know that platforms do occasionally tip over, crush people against the roof or whatever, they would have insurance as well. All of that. And yet when something happens, everybody all the way along the line have gone, not me, no, not me. And my money's my money. You're not, you'll have to pry that from my cold dead hand. Fuckers, a lot of them. Did I hear you say something about paying tax re death at work payment? That is an insult. There was two cases, or two instances there. The first was nationwide platform, so it's in the, you can watch it back, but in the piece there, this apparently the Nationwide's family liaison or whatever the fuck she was, said to Anne Mackay, we will contribute to the funeral as long as you're not planning to have a full pipe band. Who says that to a grieving widow? You've got to be a soulless twat to do that. So that's the first bit. But yes, we would like to make an ex gratia payment, but you'll be paying the tax on it. Just scummy. Scummy. Mick Norton has just joined us. Good morning, Mick. Thank you very much indeed for being here. It does make you wonder. About employment in this industry. And bearing in mind, you know, I'm every bit as guilty of this, so, you know, call me a hypocrite if you will. We all, in order to get people through the door of this industry, we all do tend to play up the good, the camaraderie, the career progress, the opportunity to play with some sexy machines, all of the things, you know, you can take your skills overseas, all of those things. But then there's this. You know, we know that, I think the last set of stats were that 50 people were killed in demolition and construction in 2022-23. We don't talk about that. We don't talk about the suicide rate. We don't talk about the sexism, the racism, the homophobia. We don't talk about the death toll, the ongoing death toll of asbestos. You know, if we were being entirely honest, and I have to do this. Not that I give a toss what anyone thinks, but I've drawn a living directly or indirectly from demolition and construction for 35 years. Rightly or wrongly, I do have a really deep love for the industry and the people within it. But man alive, it's hard to sell that, isn't it? And things like this actually make me despair for the industry that I genuinely do love. And I'm not going to make this about the NFDC because, you know, they didn't kill anyone. But that business about not responding or responding but then not further responding. Now, bearing in mind, in the time between that letter and now, the NFDC have been off to Rome for their annual convention. You know, big fancy hotel, massive bar bills. I'm sure that they've done something sponsorship-wise. They have golf days to raise money for charity. They have regional events to raise money for charity. Begins at home. You know, you've got a grieving widow, a bereaved lady here, who I've spoken to Anne. I don't even know how many times. I've spoken to Anne quite a lot. And she is far more dignified and noble than she should be. She has shown incredible patience and restraint. I wouldn't have done. You know, if the boot was on the other foot, I would be effing and jeffing. I would be knocking on the door of the NFDC. I'd be protesting outside the offices of John F. Hunt. I would make Ben Houchin's life a misery. I would report the D.I. Barker to the national press. I would be an absolute pain in the fucking arse. But she isn't. She has been nothing but stoic and dignified and noble. It would not hurt any of the companies, any of the individuals, or any of the trade organisations involved in, directly or indirectly, to reach out and say, there's only so much we can do, because, you know, they, like me, don't want to be seen to be prejudicing a court case potentially. But we feel your pain. Here is something we're going to do. But no. Mick says, Dan, I'm so glad I got out of it, or even happier I stopped my kids going into demolition. Believe me, if I lost one of my kids, God himself, I'm thinking that would not stop me, actually. Would not stop me looking for answers. Yeah, indeed. I know it should have come to my suggestion, as firms people should do, just just do the right thing, but it's just how my mind works, a way to solve a problem that firms could easily do. Yeah. And let's be absolutely honest. I mean, we kind of have that with the Lighthouse Club. You know, that's kind of what it's there to do. But one of the things I find hard with this is the timing. I mentioned, when I've had friends who have lost loved ones or whatever, and you pop round, you make them a cup of tea, or you pop round and order a pizza to make sure they're eating and stuff like that. Because when you are initially grieving, and I've seen this up close twice in the last couple of years with my sister when we lost both my parents, things like eating and paying bills are not your priority. They're not. Your mind is off elsewhere. You're not thinking about that. So should the onus not be on a quick, even if it's not, we don't know whether this one's going to prosecution or not. There are outstanding HSE charges. We don't know what the outcome of that will be. But we're 5 years in. Now, Anne and the rest of the Mackay family almost certainly needed some sort of assistance. And no amount of money is bringing John or Tommy back. I fully accept that. And, it's awful to be talking about money at the moment. But if the industry or the companies involved or their insurance companies had said, just to tide you over, here's a sum of money. You worry about grieving. You get on with your bereavement. You huddle together as a family. You take care of that, and we'll make sure that your bills are covered for a period. While that period is happening, and while you're focusing on the things that you need to focus upon, the investigation will start, and then hopefully the investigation will take place and be concluded in pretty short order. At which time we can worry about the maths and who owes who what and everything else. Why can't that happen? This is, somebody said earlier, I think it was Dan Cullen, we're talking about, I don't know what the turnover at Nationwide Platforms is. It'll be in the millions. I don't know what the turnover at John F. Hunt is. It'll be in the millions. You can't find 10, 15, 20 grand just to tide over a grieving family. And have we got the legal system so skewed now? That thing they say about if you're ever in a road traffic accident, never apologise because that's accepting responsibility. Pish and posh, I say. Surely there must be some legal way that doesn't suggest that, Nationwide Platforms. John was a trusted employee of ours. Never mind who's responsible. We're not accepting responsibility, but here is a donation to see you over the hump and the grieving that you are undoubtedly going to endure. Can we not do that? Dan says, if that happened to me, I would give them all hell, but they'd be named, shamed, and held accountable. Well, again, we do know all of the parties. It's Nationwide Platforms. They employed John Mackay. We also know it was John F. Hunt. It was their site that the accident took place. We know all of that. But even though that's in the public domain, it doesn't seem to make any difference too. Dan says these firms actually have insurance. Is this not what it's for? You would have thought, wouldn't you? You would have thought. But there are bigger questions here that need to be answered. For example, John Mackay was a mute operator. That's what he did. He was a cherry picker driver, for want of a better term. And he was dispatched with his machine to Redcar to assist in a demolition project. And that's where things went wildly wrong. Now, bearing in mind all of the hoops you need to jump through. Now, I'll give you an example. Look at me, a keyboard jockey. I'm not a demolition man. I was expected and kind of required to go on a course with the National Demolition Training Group to get a card to allow me as a keyboard merchant to go onto demolition sites. Now, at all times, whenever I'm on a demolition site, I am accompanied. I would expect nothing else. That's not my environment. I would like somebody, site manager, or whoever it is, to be stood beside of me. Can I go over there? No, you can't. Can I go over there? Yes, you can. I want that backup. I want somebody to be with me who really knows what they're doing. I can bullshit it, but people that really know what they're doing. But I've got a piece of card that says I can go on there. What was the deal with John Mackay? I'm sure he must have held a piece of plastic because he works in this industry. He held a piece of plastic that said, I can operate a cherry picker. But did that piece of plastic say, I can use a cherry picker in a demolition environment? Did it? Should it have done? Yes. Yes, I'll answer my own question. Of course it should have done. And if it didn't, surely that in itself is some form of smoking gun. You have sent somebody untrained and unexperienced in the ways and the process and the methodologies of demolition. You have sent them into harm's way unprepared. Is that not an issue? And, think about that further. If that is an issue, and personally I believe it is, but if that is an issue, every time you take, I'll give you an example. If you're on a demolition site and somebody from Pertec arrive, to fix a hydraulic hose on one of your machines, should they be there? Are they qualified to be there? Do they know enough to be there? Extend that argument even further. I've been on demolition sites right by track sites or whatever, and you have to go through additional training, additional qualifications in order to work there. Same with the nuclear industry, same with the petrochemical industry. Well, surely those coming into our environment, the demolition environment, surely the same rules apply, right? Mick says, thought I was going to have a good week. Didcot the other day, now listening to that statement from Anne. I feel like shit. The 4 I knew, the other 2 I didn't, but I feel the same for all 6, what the families are going through. Grief is a thing we all share, even if not personal. Yeah, it really is. Well, I have to say, our friend Wolfie has just arrived and says, nice beard. I had a trim yesterday. I don't want to get distracted too much, but yes, I did have a trim. Most of this is gone, but I've retained this. Wife hates it, but she hated the beard before there anyway. So thank you for that, Wolfie. Yes, I honestly don't know where. I don't know where this show goes from here, but I certainly don't know where the wider industry goes from here, because Mick has just made a point there. We're talking about Redcar today. We were talking about Didcot the other day. So, we know of 6 men, in this case it was men, 6 men that have died while on duty in the demolition industry. 4 in 2016, another 2 in 2019. But there were 50 in demolition and construction last year. I think there were 45 the year before that. And I don't get the impression, I could be wrong, but I don't think I am, these 2 cases are not unique. This is the norm. This protracted avoiding taking responsibility, obfuscation, this is now the industry norm. It's almost like it's in a rule book. Something goes wrong, shut up shop. In some cases, it is literally shut up shop. How many companies have we seen decide, actually, we're going to take voluntary liquidation? Yes, we do have a fatality court case hanging over us, but times is hard. So we're going to, and then they're back the following Monday under a completely different name. And this, the length of time that these investigations take, make that worse. Because if you've got 5 or 8.5 years to get your ducks in a row, you can be pretty damn creative. You can be pretty damn creative. You can invent reasons to, actually, we've decided to diversify. So we're going to move all of our prime demolition business over into this company here. And that company that was actually involved in that fatal accident, we're going to kind of let that wither and die. But, they're different companies now. So, so when we get a fine, assuming we do, when we get a fine, it can only be, £5 because that company doesn't really exist anymore. Yeah, and I'm going to say goodbye to Mick. Says, sod this, fellas. Think I'll give the hound a cuddle, let him take me for a pint or two. For F's sake, stay safe. I don't want to hear of any of you get hurt or worse. The mates list is getting too short. Yeah. Dan says, must go. See you guys on the morrow for the final show for a week. Just want to go back very, very quickly to... Now, bearing in mind, this has been ongoing now for 5 years today, okay? So we already know the machination. So the police have been on this and the health and safety executive who have been very communicative, but, the whole thing is still stuck. But Anne heard from the HSE back in August. More than a month later, they're about to conclude this part of the investigation. They then submit that to the HSE Legal Services Division. The Legal Services Division will take that and some evidence. They'll look through it to make sure that it's legally admissible. They then pass that to the lawyer who is in control of the case, and they will decide whether or not they should prosecute. At which point they then need to, assuming they do decide to actually prosecute, they will then need to apply for court, and that could be another 2 or 3 years. So, as I said, this is becoming the norm. We've already said that it's 8.5 years since Didcot. Assuming this does take 2 or possibly 3 years, it will be another 8-year investigation into Redcar. Yeah. Mick says, Dan says rather, Mick, you've got my number. If you like, give us a call whenever you like, or Mark can forward it to you. I can do that. I think he may have gone, but yes. So I don't suppose for one moment we've made any impact on the wider industry whatsoever. And for that, I can only apologise. I will be back tomorrow, hopefully with something a little more cheery. And Maggie, the Mackay family, the Williams family, I wish you well for today on behalf of myself and the rest of the audience here. Our thoughts are definitely with you. I know it's a cliched thing to say, but I do mean it. We are thinking about you today. Tomorrow is the last show for 10 days. So please make sure you turn in, make the most of it, because you'll be missing my dulcet tones for about 10 days. Yeah. Mick says, extend my regards to the Redcar families, mate. I will indeed. Yeah, on behalf of Mick, Dan, Gary, Ken, Wolfie over in the States, Mick, everybody, and Maggie, everybody, thoughts are with you. I'll be back tomorrow for something else. Till then, everybody, do me a favour, would you? Stay safe.